everyone. Great to see you all on the line tonight. Hope you're keeping yourself warm wherever you are. Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past and present. Thank you for joining us for today's AMA session, where we will delve into our track record of investing in women. I'm Rani. I serve as the community manager at Antler, Australia. Also present on the call are Joel and Nina, members of the scouting team at Antler. We have all heard the fact that across the globe, women-led startups have only received a fraction of the total venture capital investments. According to the State of Australian Funding Report in 2022, just 3% of the total VC capital went to all women-founded startups, while just 10% went to those with at least one woman in their co-founding teams. At Antler, we recognize that funding women-led businesses is not only the right thing to do for its social and economic benefits, but also a strategic decision, as these companies often outperform. We will be discussing these topics and more tonight. We will have Adele, associate partner at Antler Australia, sitting down with our portfolio company founder, Helena, who is behind Flow of Work Co. Flow of Work Co was initially backed by Antler in 2020 and recently closed an oversubscribed seed funding round led by a US VC. Yay! We will begin the session with introduction to Antler, highlighting our track record of investing in women, and then move on to an insightful conversation with Helena, where she will share more about her journey as a founder building a business with us. At any point of the conversation, feel free to contribute by addressing to your questions, comments in the chat box. We'll also have a dedicated Q&A to answer any of your burning questions. And before we kick off, just some housekeepings. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking, just to avoid any background noise. And if possible, please keep your camera turned on. All right, so let's get into it. Adele, the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you, Rani. Hopefully most will be familiar with Antler, but for those who are not, to give some context on who we are, is that we are a global VC operating from here in Australia. Now, when I joined Antler 4.5 years ago, we were the joint second location to go live. That was after the headquarters of Singapore and a couple others in Europe. And now Antler exists in over 23 locations in 6 continents across the globe and has assets under management of $500 million and has made over 600 investments to date. So it really has been significant growth across the globe, and we really are backing early stage companies at scale. Looking at how we've scaled here in Australia as well, we started out just with a location in Sydney a couple of years ago with the help of LaunchVic. We also expanded into Melbourne. We've invested in over 100 portfolio companies from our first fund, and we have coming up to 20 full-time members of staff. So how Antler works is that we select diverse and exceptional founders. We really are the founder first investor. And those individuals come from 3 core personas. Now, people never fit nicely and neatly into boxes, but loosely we look for the tech and product builders. So those are the ability to actually build the product. So software engineers, hardware engineers, or product leaders. Business operators, so those are the people who can put the business model and go to market behind a product, and then the domain experts. So often the domain experts bring the idea, then we attach, let's say, the exited founder, the seasoned commercial operator to it, and then the builder, and we have a business. Now, as this is all focused on our women founders, let me just highlight a few of these. So an example of a tech founder who has built with us is Ads. She was an early software engineer of HiPages. She then went on to lead one of their engineering teams, and she joined Antler to then come on to be the CTO and co-founder of Rightpaw, which is a marketplace for dog breeders. And then another example is Sally. So Sally came to Antler with the lived experience of a problem that she wanted to solve. Now, in the majority of cases, it comes from industry experience, but in Sally's, she'd actually had a childhood which was afflicted by alcohol and drug abuse within her family. And given then her experience in tech with companies such as Secure Code Warrior and Propeller Aero, she really knew that there was a tech way that they could solve the problem of relapse. And so she created what was now called, it was called Ali at the time, and it's now called Lived. So what Antler does is bring together these diverse and exceptional founders, create the teams, and then in nearly all cases, we are the first investors. So to the right of this slide, it shows some of the institutions which Antler draws from. So top tier education establishments, management consulting, tech scale-ups, right through to what are now the some of the larger companies like Atlassian operating here in Australia. What an Antler cohort looks like is that on average that an Antler founder has 11 years of work experience and in a lot of startup experience. So we can take people from corporate, but actually 57% of those who choose to build with us have come from serial entrepreneurs themselves. And a great stat is that we have 65 different nationalities represented within our Antler cohorts. Now, this is excellent. And what we're doing here is breaking down a barrier, because what Antler believes is entrepreneurial success should be based on your experience in terms of your ability and grit, not necessarily thanks to capital pathways that you have from attended a certain high school, a certain university, or a certain large-scale tech company that has alumni communities. So often a barrier that migrants face is they have that in their country of origin, but they don't have that when they come to Australia. And Antler is able to give them those connections to really enable this group and break down the barriers that they can face as well. So hopefully I'm drawing the picture that Antler really does champion diversity across the globe and across the board. So if we look into the Antler portfolio on a global level, it is amazing to say that 143 nationalities are represented, and 61% of those founders we have backed identify with an underrepresented community. And on a global level, it's 32% of the companies have at least one woman as the co-founders, which is really exceptional. And then when we look at Australia, we're slightly above those global trends, which is excellent. So we have over 65 nationalities represented, as I mentioned, and we have backed 37% of companies which has at least one woman co-founder. Then a lot of that stems from the Antler team. We have a really diverse team, which are actually those who are selecting the companies, as in like the founders that join us, coaching those companies, and then making those investment decisions. So when we look at the Antler team, we have 48 nationalities represented across those 25 locations. 41% of Antler employees are women, and 35% of those in leadership positions are women within Antler. So we are able to represent diversity as an organization, and then also in the companies that we back. So then on Australia by the numbers over the last 4 years. So how we are really uniquely positioned to impact the gender mix of founders, because if you speak to most VCs, the challenge that they say they face is that there is not enough top of funnel. And what they mean by that is they don't have enough founded companies actually coming to them. So why Antler is uniquely positioned is because in nearly all cases we actually form the companies ourselves. So what we're able to do is remove the barriers that are often faced, more indexed towards women, such as pools to capitals, access to potential co-founder networks, to be able to enable them at the earliest stage. So Antler in numbers in across the last 4 years of operating is that we've had over 8,000 applications. We have onboarded over 500 founders, and we've invested in over 100 teams. And in 25% of those cases, they are founders that identify as a woman. So what I mean by that is, of the 500 founders that have joined Antler to seek Antler funding, 25% identify as a woman. But as I mentioned, 37% of the companies we back have a woman co-founder. So what I truly love about that stat is, even though women only represent a quarter of those who join, when they do join, they have an outstated chance of us backing them, which is amazing. And then of the companies then that we have selected to follow on invest in, so Antler doesn't just provide the first check, we can follow on through all future rounds from our local and also global funds through to exit IPO. 39% of the companies that we have chosen to do that in have at least one woman co-founder. So what I'm hopefully painting the picture of is those numbers just continue to get better. So when only 25% join an Antler cohort, 37% of those we back have a woman founder, and 39% of those who we choose to continue to back have a woman co-founder in as well. And then to speak about the Antler cohort, portfolio, how it performs more broadly in terms of securing follow-on funding. 80% of Antler portfolio companies raise follow-on funding within 12 months. Over the last 4 years, they've raised over 100 million in external capital. So that's capital from other VCs and angels, etc., other sources of funding. And 24 million of that external capital has been raised by companies with at least one woman co-founder. So a lot of the time there is, it is stark outside of what I'm saying now. Like, the figure often is around 2. At best I've seen it's 2.7, often it's low as 2.3% of VC dollars going to women companies. But within Antler, when we're operating so early and we're able to have this impact top of funnel, we are really able to bring more women-backed companies into the deal flow of later stage VC. So if you're thinking like, how do these numbers not correlate with the other stark statistics I've heard? Like, that's the difference. And hopefully this is the difference that Antler is able to bring, and the ability that we're able to impact on what is a huge problem is in the number of women founders who are then going on to secure significant capital further down the value chain. So with that all in mind, I'd just like to just highlight a few of the women who have built businesses with us, because often I feel as a woman, and I hear from many of my peers, that we need to seek examples. And when we see another woman doing it, we think, oh gosh, hang on, like that's opening the door for me, and I identify with that, and now I can follow in those footsteps. So our female founders are those such as Helena, who we're going to have a candid conversation with very soon, who is building the HR tech Flow of Work Co. There's Sky. Now, Sky is the CEO of Upcover, and Upcover is enabling any online business, brand, or marketplace to become distributors of insurance products. But when Sky joined us, she was actually just sitting in Zurich saying, like, watching the rise of the gig economy, thinking, like, how are there not more fit for product insurance, fit for purpose insurance products for gig economy workers? And that was the problem she came into Antler to solve. And this is now how Upcover has evolved over the years. There's Margot, who is the co-founder and CEO of The One Two. Now, The One Two is disrupting the lingerie business. Maybe not surprisingly, but starkly, actually, the majority of that industry is for men, which might explain why many of us are feeling pretty uncomfortable every day in what we are wearing. I believe Margot's stat from the top of mind was that 78% of us actually feel uncomfortable in our bras. And when it's something we are wearing on a daily basis, that is incredible. So that is the problem that she is solving. And her background was an experienced venture capitalist. She had 5 startups under her belt, including being one of the original employees of rocket company, The Iconic. And then recently we've also backed Bethany. So she is the CPO and co-founder of Phobo, which enables food distributors and suppliers to retain customers and deepen relationships and grow revenue. So I'm wanting to hopefully here paint the picture that also women are building really diverse businesses. A question I'm often asked is why Antler has such strong statistics, as in 37% of our companies being founded by women. And it is because we, unlike a lot of VCs, don't shy away from D2C, but it's not just D2C products, companies that our women founders are producing. They are across the board in HR tech, insurtech, and B2B SaaS. So now I'd love to speak with Helena, who has got the lived experience of building a business with Antler and then also out in the wilds for the last, coming up to 3 years. So Helena, I'd love to hand over to you. I'd love you to give a brief background, provide a brief background of yourself before joining Antler, and then we'll go into Flow of Work Co.
Sure. Well, it's lovely to be here. I'm the co-founder of Flow of Work. We'll be rebranding on Friday, so stay tuned for our new name, new brand coming on Friday. But before joining Antler, I'd always, I would be considered a domain expert. So I'd come from the HR and talent space. I guess I was a bit frustrated to see the same old companies make the same old problems. And after having some exposure to HR tech and startups in one of my previous roles, I decided to make the leap into startup life just before the pandemic, actually, without any concept of what was about to happen to the planet. And I applied for Antler after quitting my lovely, secure, safe, full-time corporate role.
Oh, I remember it well, Helena, because we had our interview in person, and then
we did
switched to virtual. So yeah, it was back in those days. So I'd love now for you to position. We have a beautiful slide here showing some of your incredible stats, but if you can talk to what Flow of Work is today, and then we'll take a step back into how it evolved within Antler.
So we are, I guess, coming up for a 3-year-old business now that came out of the Antler Accelerator. You were the first check, the first investor. We, maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we closed our seed round, which is 2.8 million. It's actually AUD, sorry, it's 1.8 US, 2.8 AUD. So it's not quite as exciting as it looks on the slide. Sorry, I didn't pick that up. We just hired our first US employee who starts on Monday, our head of sales. We've won our first customer in the US. We'll be launching there. We're rebranding. I don't know what to say. Like, so much is happening right now since we raised that capital, and so much has happened in the last 12 months. We're a different business, I'd say, than we were 12 months ago.
We hear that a lot within Antler, and the companies that we back and our investment committees often, like a year or two later, are evolved incredibly. So perhaps then let's take it back to the beginning and remember, if you can, 3 years ago, your time within Antler. Like, as you know, you were a woman thinking, I want to co-found a business. I can see a value of doing it with Antler. Like, what brought you to Antler, and then how did the experience with Antler support you?
So I'd probably say I had no idea that there was such a thing as an accelerator. I had the language, the terminology. I don't think I'd even heard of an angel investor. This was a new planet to me before joining Antler, and it was a bit of a case of great timing. That was the pull, I think, into the program. Like, the timing was exceptional. I was probably at the end of my useful life cycle in the job I was in, and I just didn't have the first idea what it would take to start up a business. So for me, it was the opportunity to do this. It was like startup school, right? It was everything you need to know to start a business. It was the validation. Like, it was thinking, could I do this? Like, am I the right person to do this? And I thought that the program and the education would be great. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to meet people like me or similar to me, or at least with a similar mindset to do this with. So it was the prospect of all the learning content, the prospect of these amazing connections I suspected I would make, and the chance to do it in a kind of like structured, programmatic way. And I found you on LinkedIn. I applied for Antler like I would apply for a job. So knew I was sick of my current job. I started thinking about other jobs, and up you popped, really. It was, right time, right place for me.
Excellent. And as I mentioned, it's a real melting pot of those who come to Antler. So some people have a large amount of startup exposure and others don't. So when Helena speaks to it being like startup school, what we have when you join Antler is a lot of it is around how to meet your co-founder and validate ideas. But then also on a weekly basis, we talk through like the thematics really behind starting an early stage company. So those can be like, what is and what are the early signs of product market fit? Like, this is what a term sheet looks like and the clauses that are important to you. Like, this is how you should think about building a capital pathway. So for people like Helena, who have like a real amount of domain expertise and are thinking I can build a business around it, but yet, to become familiar with a lot of this terminology, and that's how Antler can really support. And then perhaps you can now speak to Helena, you and your co-founder Nikolai, the meeting there and the skills match that you found.
So Nick and I were probably a bit unusual from your typical partnership, because we'd actually worked together in the past. So we didn't have an idea. We knew it would be in the kind of HR tech domain and world, given that that's what we know and that's what we're passionate about. But we didn't come with a fixed idea, and it was actually through the design sprint process and working with other people in the cohort that we actually came up with the idea. And I will admit to being, when we pitched it during the design sprint process, thinking this is a stupid idea, no one's going to like this, and that was the one that stuck. So Nick and I had worked together in the past, and he brings the technical capabilities. He's the business process person, the strategic thinker, that he works through all of the kind of incredible detail it takes to run a business, whereas I'm probably like the ideas woman. I'll run at 1,000,000 miles an hour, while poor Nick sometimes has to figure out what it's going to take to execute on that, if that makes sense. So we're quite complementary in terms of skills, capability and personality, but we actually did know each other before joining the cohort. We did spend lots of time with other founders as well. We spent I think we would have loved to have had more sales and marketing knowledge and expertise in our team if I could do that again. We had worked together, came up with this crazy idea with the help of the team, and I guess here we are, still going. It's not been easy though.
And I think to describe it then, how it works within Antler is that you have a series of opportunities to pitch your idea. So when you start to, you see a potential co-founder or co-founders, you start to work together in a design sprint format. And then what happens is there are a couple of pitching opportunities. So we have weekly sharing sessions where you share your ideas and your progress with the cohort, because there's a lot of collective learnings that can be gathered from those 80 individuals, with really strong backgrounds who can throw in some really, critical thinking or ideas. And then there are also office hours and ideas validation sessions with the Antler team. So in the initial weeks of Antler, it's about finding your best co-founder. And then we have those mechanisms, those 4 mechanisms to support in validating an idea, to describe the process for those listening in a bit more depth. So I think if we could delve in a little bit more with Helena, like, you pitched the idea, you thought it was crazy, it started to get some traction. So talk to the group about maybe flow of work code now. What's the problem that you are solving and how are you doing that?
We are solving for talent development and retention, and we help mid-sized organizations with that problem. So in our past lives, we had seen great people leave because the feeling was that there was no way they could progress their skills or career where they were, and literally the same people on the other side of the house recruiting for people that were just like them. And it just became a kind of nonsensical problem that technology surely could solve. It's a connection of the dots, right? It's supply meets demand. Doesn't really get simpler than that. What does get complicated is we're dealing with people. People don't do what you want them to do or behave like you think that they should behave. So I don't think that's the ultimate problem we're solving. We've spent a lot of time designing experiences that are really compelling for both the employee. So there has to be a compelling reason to come into this platform and do something we want you to do. And at the same time, that's what creates the value for the organization. So we've built models that can predict and infer employee skills. We can look into your future and look at how your future-proof your career is in terms of risk of automation. We can look at your economic prospects, and if you learn that skill, you can potentially boost your career in that direction or earn that much more money. And we do that by through lots of labour market data, and we've built several models to be able to predict this. And then on the flip side, we aggregate and bring together all of the different ways in an organisation that you can learn and develop, which companies with between 500 and 5,000 employees, which is our target market, all have. And what I'm talking about here is people who want to mentor, e-learning or in-person learning content. Most companies of the 500 plus size have some kind of learning capability. We have projects, and these are an underappreciated way of getting skills and experience. So we take company projects and work that needs to be done and turn it into a learning opportunity. And we have jobs as well. So we connect the skills and aspirations and goals of people to work and learning opportunities that need to be done. And the idea is that we create a win-win for both an employer and organization.
Awesome, Helena. I love that description, especially how you start out with, yes, people are a lot more complex than software, and therefore something which should be supply and demand has all this complexity in the middle that you're solving. I should say now to the audience, now that you hopefully have a grasp of Antler and of Flow of Work Co, like, please do feel free to ask questions. You can either pop them in the chat and I will ask Helena directly, or we have a couple of the Antler scouting team, Joel, Nina and Rani, who can also directly answer them if they're just quick typable questions. So to everybody who's in the audience, like, please feel free now to, after that context has been given, ask either myself or Helena any questions that you have. I have a couple more, so I'll keep going whilst you're thinking. But yeah, please do, audience. It's definitely for your benefit. So do ask your questions. Certainly no need to be shy. This is designed to be a really safe and candid space. So what I'd love to ask now, Helena, is to go on to your fundraising journey, because you've as you say, it hasn't been easy. Like, the first blow was kind of COVID hitting nearly instantly, and then obviously the economic decline that we've seen over the last couple of years. So your backers in particular are women focused. So I'd love for you to talk about, your part one of the question is how you've navigated these overly complex times, and then part two, how you've structured your fundraising process and how you've been able to attract some very significant backers, especially those who back women.
So I would say that my approach to this process was to treat it like a sales funnel, and it was to spend time researching and understanding the types of investors that would invest in the stage of business that we're in the location that we're in, at the rate of progress that we'd made, and that we felt some kind of synergy with, if that makes sense. Like, people we want, it's like a relationship, right? It's people that you want to have on your cap table, that you can see yourself working with, and that will support your business goals. So I treated it like a sales process. So I spent loads of time on the internet, loads of time on LinkedIn, Crunchbase, hustling for people's PitchBook logins, and just there's loads of open source platforms as well, and spreadsheets where you can find lists of investors. And it was a mixture of obediently pitching the way that the VC tells you they want to pitch, like fill in the form on the website, wait patiently for 4 days, blah, 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 and then bypassing that process by finding out who knew who could introduce me, how could I use my kind of former recruitment skills to find people online and connect with them. So I did have a CRM for this. I actually did, like I say, treat it like a sales process. Once I'd done all my research and found out who my target market was, I then started approaching them. And then you have to have like a really disciplined process. People say it's a full-time job, but freaking heck, for a while, it really is a full-time job managing this process. You have to make sure that your collateral's all ready. And that's all of the things that Antler taught us is have a teaser deck, have an intro email, make sure your LinkedIn profile's up to date, have your substantial deck, and be prepared for kind of every different variation of how people might want to engage and pitch with you. Generally for me, it was more of an informal pitching process leading up to a more formal pitch process. So generally the process was an initial meeting, a kind of fit check, a lot of rejections, prepare yourself for that as well. And then for those that progressed, it sort of went up in levels of intensity, generally to pitching to the ICs or investment committees, as you'll learn that means, to actually get that funding. Our lead investor is a US-based VC called Aliavia, who specifically invests in women-founded and co-founded businesses in Australia and the US. And their value proposition is to help these businesses scale in the US. We also had investment from Antler. Thank you very much, Antler. And a New Zealand VC, again, with a very strong women focus called Even Capital. Walemi Capital, which is the family office of Robin Denham and her family of Tesla, again, who are extremely diversity focused. So I think what I'm trying to say is we went for all of the kind of traditional venture capitalists and angel investors that you might know already, but we also did specifically target those that we had a higher propensity to invest in women-founded businesses. And yeah, we played that card, I won't lie.
Excellent, Helena. I love how you talk to structuring it like a sales funnel. And I think it is so important when you are approaching an investor to have done your homework and understood, like, how do we fit inside their investment mandate in terms of, like, yes, you know, makeup of the co-founding team, stage of business, industry, etc. Like most VCs in particular are quite open with who their portfolio are. So a really good trick is to just look and see similarities. You definitely, like, they're not going to invest if you have a direct competitor, but you do want to see that they have an appetite for your stage or area. So I think that's really sound advice in how you went about that, Helena. And honestly, like, the chair of Tesla's family office investing in you is quite an upgrade, and a US VC. So it's yeah, really, really well done, and your hard work certainly paid off there. We have a few questions coming in. So the first one that I would like I'm going to group them slightly. So I really like this one, which was when you went on about acquiring your first customer, like, how did you do that? Because there is certainly a substantial size one, and usually in startup land is, you know, you kind of go after some smaller fish and then build up to the enterprise. But you certainly went straight for the mid to large market segment and managed to land a great first customer. So yeah, please share that story with us.
We did all of the things that you might expect, which is spend loads of time with our network, asking for feedback, testing prototypes. But how we actually landed the first customer was on a Facebook group, an HR Facebook group with a US focus. And they were, a member of their team were on there naming some of our competitors and asking if anyone had tried these competitors and were there any other companies that they'd recommend. And we reached out and we're like, hi, give us a go. They did meet the competition. And the cool thing about this company, so this was the Motley Fool in the US, the cool thing about them is that they like to co-create. They were one of the first customers of Culture Amp. So they know what it's like to work with a startup. They actually like that it's not an off-the-shelf product that has to be it can't be kind of customized or anything like that. So for them, they actually were excited about the prospect of working with a startup. And we were upfront about this. I know it sounds a bit deceitful, but when we pitched the product, we were pitching a Figma prototype. So we did all of the things that you read up in the books, and your like body is dying on the inside because they're going, like I say, we were clear it was a prototype. Can the system do this? And you're like, yes, it can, because it's a prototype. And then we evolved that relationship to be really clear about what we would deliver by when. So we put a kind of 3-month contract together with really clear deliverables in recognition of the fact we would be building together. We describe what the process would be like. And off the strength of that, we hired a couple of people in the team, freelancers and contractors, and went about fundraising to raise more. So that's how we won our first customer, and that's what we did. And it was brilliant. I remember so vividly, we were in the co-working space that we used to occupy in. It was like 11:30 at night. We were shouting at each other because we were so stressed. And we were like, this thing's never going to come off. And we won it. So yeah, it was a good memory, kind of.
Congratulations. And there's a similarity there, that it's again finding a match, because a lot of the time when larger companies think that they want to work with startups, but there's a significant gap. So the fact that you had conviction that being an early adopter of culture and then knew what it was like to work with an early stage company is really important. So that's a similarity with how your investors should have a match, and then also how your early customers should have a match as well if you're going for more established customers. That feeds nicely into a question that we have around how to really test that there is that cultural alignment with an investor, because you mentioned earlier, you really want to have people that that will back you on your cap table. But how do you, I suppose, make then that investment decision-making process more of a two-way street to ensure that you are getting that cultural alignment with an investor, and it's not just them seeking the information that they want from you?
I don't know if I definitely knew the answer to that question before I went into the capital raising process, but I can tell you now the investors that are awesome and the attributes of really awesome investors. So maybe I'll do it the other way around, if that makes sense. It's the investors that are best for us are the ones that we can Slack or WhatsApp or call with, like, oh my God, this thing happened, or what would you do, or who can you connect me with, or I need to do X, can you help me with, who can help me with this? It's the ones that we had. Sprint has been superb. Sprint have got this unbelievable analyst who's helped us evaluate our financial model, and it's stuff like that that takes up so much headspace, and if you've never done it before, is so stressful. But these have done it 20 million times before, and they know exactly what they're doing. And the other thing is a great community. So it is the relationship between an investor and founder is different between that and your peers. There's no doubt about it. It is a different type of relationship, but it's the group of people, or it's the ability to connect me with a group of people who are kind of like my stage or a little bit further ahead of me, who know exactly what it's like to be stressed or tired or want win or get stuck on something that can help you with that. So yeah, to sort of summarize that, it's the people I turn to for advice and support, and feeling like it's okay to do that. It's great community and network, and it's like, please can you help me build my financial model? It's those kind of things. I don't know how the right ways to say, but those have been the really super things that our great investors have given us. But it's also sometimes it's really hard, like things don't go right, and you need to be this kind of investor is going to be there for the bad times as well as the good, and is going to support you. So our lead investor, who sits on our board, picked up on the fact that I was a bit stressed the other day in our board meeting, and after the board had closed, like checked that I was okay as a human being. So it's touches like that that make the difference, I'd say, for me in retrospect.
Awesome, Helena. So I think a way is like not shying away from being quite upfront in the conversations that you'll have, because often there's a bit of a dance between a company and an investor over a period of time. So I think it's not being afraid to ask the questions on, like, how responsive are you in terms of support? Like, what is your support platform? What can we expect in return? Like, is this just money, or is there money and
Yes.
X, Y, Z?
And
attached.
some of our investors are hands off, and we're totally fine with that. I think one of the questions that again I wish I'd asked, it's sort of transpired now, is almost like, tell me a story of the worst thing that's happened to one of your portfolio founders, and how did you handle that? And even speaking to other portfolio founders, which we did, we vetted a couple, if that makes sense. And there's some real hairy stories out there, but the way that some of these investors have supported has been unbelievable.
Amazing. So a few questions. I was wanting to just group them. I think that those were the ones around fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have a couple which is going to take you, sorry, one more which is on fundraising, which is from Elise, is and this is a really good one, and it's a complex one to challenge to take on, because
I see the question.
Fundraising is a full-time job and it needs to be done by the CEO. The CEO has to be the face of fundraising. So how did you, or how have you balanced your time and resources between seeking investment, building your product, and still securing growth in terms of customers?
Amazing question. And I would say that I have an amazing co-founder who just took over almost everything that wasn't fundraising, if that makes sense, during that period of time. So that was incredible. That the way that he really stepped up to things that he wasn't necessarily comfortable with or in his sweet spot was unbelievable. So supportive co-founder, and a lot of delegation. The team, we have a small team, but also they're really supportive, and they can do way more than we kind of give them credit for. And I don't know why I forget that all the time, but bringing the team into the journey, and letting them take the load off and delegating what you can. And I don't know, otherwise it's just like trying to split yourself in five and accepting the fact that you're going to do some things terribly and not to the standard that you would love to. But it's like, what do I do? Do I raise money, or do I, like, what's the most important thing I need to do right now? And you're going to feel, there are days where I genuinely feel like I'm doing a terrible job of everything. But then I remind myself, we still have a startup, we have happy customers, we have a great team, we're doing okay. I don't think I have the perfect answer, but it's freaking tough. Yeah.
I think that you need to just accept that it is the job of the CEO. It is going to be very time consuming. And that's why you ideally want to look for investors who can also support you on future rounds. And that you are really thinking about the amount that you raise, because really you only want to be doing it, every 18 months. So it's not this distraction every 6 months that you're needing to do again. So investors like Antler, who can follow on in future rounds, and also think, what is the runway I need to get me to at least 18 months, so I don't have to go through this distraction, because it is a distraction again.
And then whatever you think you need, add contingency, because everything's going to take you longer and cost you more than you think it will. That's another top tip.
No, very good. A few of these questions now are taking you back, Helena, if that's okay, to your time in Antler. I suspect that for people who are about to be potentially joining our August cohort. So what was your journey? This is from Alexandra. What was your journey from figuring out your solution idea to building a digital solution? And did that happen post investment? So I think to help crystallize the question is like, what happened before the Antler investment, and then to get the investment, and then what did you then do post the investment to get your first customers?
So before investment, we had validated the idea with as many people that we could. We got, I think, three development clients signed up. So there was no money exchange, but we had commitments from 3 pretty cool clients actually that said, yes, this is a problem I feel, this is this kind of solution I would buy, and I'd be willing to spend some of my precious time every week or 2 weeks giving you feedback to help you develop the product. So that came pre. So we'd done all the competition validation. We kind of roughly knew what people would pay for the solution. We knew that there was competition, but not too much, and we knew that there was a unique spin that we could take. And then we validated that we could build a thing conceptually. So that we'd done before IC, an investment. And then post-investment, Nikolai actually was working, my co-founder was working, he still had a job. He was the primary breadwinner at that time. So he hadn't finished, he still had to kind of wrap up some things with his job, and there were some challenges there. So he didn't start full-time with us straight away. It was a bit of an unusual situation. And so we didn't have development capabilities for the first probably 4 or 5 months. And that turned out to be a bit of a blessing, because I think had we run headfirst into building something without spending some of the time we did validating, that actually might have cost us money and slowed us down. So we actually worked with someone that Antler put us in touch with, which was a digital agency, to do a bit more product validation and very low fidelity prototyping, which then formed the basis. We tested the prototypes with individuals, we iterated the prototypes in terms of fidelity until the one I mentioned, which we pitched to a customer. So we went kind of back to basics. We really got crystal clear on the problem we were solving, who we were solving it for, and that we were testing like post-it notes with people. You could die, but it was the best thing we ever did, because this system was clearly not a system, because it was a post-it note. And the feedback you get, and the people are just telling you what this system needs to do to solve their problems, and you have to listen, distill what's good, versus what's not helpful, and then you go and build it. So still the process we follow to this day, actually. Everything comes from a place of like concept, research, very low fidelity prototyping, testing, iterating before anything goes into build. That was a principle I'm glad we followed. So yeah, that was what happened pre, that's what happened post, and that's the process we follow to this day.
Awesome, Helena. I think what I'd like to stress then is, coming to an Antler investment committee, you don't necessarily have to have an MVP, like a built, early version of a product, and you don't need to be revenue generating like some companies are, but some companies, need to overcome regulatory hurdles or are building in deep tech. So, that's a significant way off. So what you do need to come is show that you've done a significant amount of validation to really demonstrate this is a problem and we have a solution that the market is showing signs that it would want. And like Helena did, that was in the form of letters of intent. So that's really what we're looking for the Antler check to be written. And then usually customers and true product building comes post the Antler investment committee. Now, Marati, I hope I said that correctly, forgive me if I didn't, but she's asked a question which does affect women more than it does with men, due to the societal inequalities that continue to exist. They are evolving. So perhaps you could speak to your experience of how you balanced, the early stages of building a company. So, you left your corporate role, you were not on a salary or in a very low salary for a considerable amount of time. Like, how do you advise? How do you, what are your words of support or advice for people who are thinking like, how do I, it sounds like a lovely idea, but like, how do I financially or time-wise set myself up to be able to do this?
So financially, I don't think there's a really easy answer there. We were fortunate, my partner and I, that we had savings. I don't know, not everyone's in that kind of fortunate position. And had we not had savings, and had I not had a very supportive partner who was like fine with me literally kind of cutting off all income for quite a considerable amount of time, that just wouldn't have worked. And I think that's maybe one of the things that everyone should prepare themselves for, is look yourself in the eye, speak with your other half if you have one, and like sit down and work out how much it costs you to exist, and what you can kind of like literally exist on. We started taking salaries. I started taking a salary a bit later actually in the journey. So my personal financial circumstances allowed me to go a little bit longer without an income. And after we raised some pre-seed capital, so after the Antler money, we raised some more money from angel investors the year before last. And it was only really when we kind of closed that round and modeled what it was going to take us to do that we all felt comfortable taking a bit of a salary from the business. We didn't all do that at the same time. We took admittedly different amounts at different times, and that was okay for us. It's the same now, and we know that it's all kind of wash out in the end, let's say. So there's no easy answer on the salary side of things, but you do need to kind of work out your own personal runway, and kind of the minimum it's going to take you to live, and cost you to live, and really be okay with being frugal and sort of not doing everything that you might have taken very much for granted when you're in full-time and gainful employment. Yeah.
I would add, like, we as Antler advise a couple of things here, is that you do, like Helena, ideally need to have at least 6 months of financial personal runway, because we suggest that you all founders do take a salary, because this is a stressful journey, and financial stress is particularly a painful
You don't
burden.
need it.
So yeah, do ensure that you do have the financial runway of at least 6 months to be able to do this. But we also expect from the Antler check that a founder salary is drawn from that, because founder health is absolutely paramount. And I'd also like to I mentioned her earlier, but Margot of the 1-2, she actually had a baby, her second baby, during this process as well. So during the Antler cohort, she was pregnant with her second baby. She pitched to us and future investors, all either heavily pregnant or actually actively breastfeeding. So again, just to display a myth that like both can't be done. It's a question of, startup baby or human baby. We have got amazingly just incredible women who've shown that they are able to do both. But again, it really is making sure that you have your life and support networks set up to enable you to do that, because founder health is absolutely paramount. I just like, then we have a final question, which I believe I haven't answered, but I have done with the others, but please raise a hand if I haven't got to your question, because we do just have 6 minutes left. Millie has asked, following a rejection from a potential investor, did you proactively seek specific feedback or get the chance and request to pitch again? So I think I would like to broaden this question slightly into, how do you build relationships with investors over time? Because really that's what most investors are looking for, is like to build a relationship, get to a point of comfort, and then make a final yes decision or no decision. So how do you balance the yes, this is us, is a no now, but I'm going to keep you in touch and it's going to be a yes in 6 months, with actually understanding when a no is a no? So how do you manage that feedback process and making sure whether this is a let's keep the door open or it's actually a closed no?
I'd say building those relationships early is critical, and Antler did that for us extremely well, and probably arguably we met some investors way before we were kind of eligible in terms of the types of investments they make. But those warm introductions are unbelievably invaluable, and they give you permission to then form a relationship, put someone on your newsletter, and build up that kind of cadence of trust. I definitely think we could have done that better. And one of my learnings from this whole seed fundraising experience is that we'll be raising our Series A. Hopefully in about 18 months, we'll start the process. I think it's going to take me at least 6 months to do, and it depends on the performance of the business. So I know now I need to start that kind of like pipeline building process, as daunting as it feels, with my next set of investors. So I need to kind of have that funnel being built, and I need to start having coffee catch-ups or Zoom calls or whatsoever with my next cohort of investors. And they need to be receiving regular positive communication about what we've done, and also what hasn't worked as well. Investors like to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. So relationship building is really, really critical. We got loads of no's. We did get loads of no's. We didn't take no for an answer in some cases. We repitched in a few cases. We kind of came back in 6 months, asked to reconnect. In some cases, got a second no. It's kind of like you just dust it off now. You just get used to the no's, and it doesn't bother you so much. But we always stay in touch with everyone who said no, because it might be no now, but yes later. So yeah, relationships early.
Yeah, and from the majority of VCs, what they're wanting to do is build a relationship over time. So what they're wanting to see is, what is Helena saying that she can do now? Check in 2 months. has she done it? What worked? What didn't work? What did she learn from it? And what they're doing is like tracking the trajectory to give them conviction and being able to write a check. So yes, what Helena's describing in terms of that relationship building process is so important.
I lost an investor because I said I was going to follow up and I didn't. That was one really hard lesson to learn. Yeah, I wish I hadn't done that.
Always follow up. Amazing. So just then, I think I've answered everyone's questions. Thank you very much for everybody attending. Just wanting to share that our next Antler intake is starting on the 14th of August. So we run a 2 to 3 stage interview process. So it really would be great if anybody is thinking about applying, inspired by Helena's story, then do, and we would love to speak with you. So we're going to pop in the chat just how to do that. It's really very simple via the website, and we're also going to pop in a link where you can learn more about the Antler platform, because as Helena described, it's really important for you to understand what you get in return from an investor, be it just capital or further support. So we'll have all of those details in the chat for you. But thank you very much for everybody's time. Helena, I think you should just really congratulate yourself for everything that's been achieved over the last 2 to 3 years, going from that crazy idea that no one's going to like to have a VC and multiple VC backed companies both in Australia and the US. So really,
who'd have thunk it? Thank you.
Do you have any parting words for any of our attendees who are thinking do I take the leap? Yeah,
do it. 100% do it. I've got it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but I love it. Do it.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I agree with Candice. You are amazing. Helena, thank you everybody so much for attending, and we hope to speak with you again soon.